You are not a saint. I remember your words clearly, the ones you whispered in the hallway weeks before everything shattered. Well, it was just. You left the sentence unfinished. You paused, glanced at me, then turned away with that half smile. At the time, I didn't question what you meant. I think now that you chose your words carelessly, not expecting me to hold on to them. But I did. I stored them in the back of my mind like a misplaced receipt, and they remained there until the day I saw their true meaning. I don't raise my voice. There's no anger in the way I speak to you, no dramatic outburst. I talk to you the way a surgeon explains a procedure, quietly, precisely, and without tremor in my voice. Maybe that's why it hurts more than if I were to yell. I have read about men who lose themselves in a rage, who break dishes and slam doors. I used to think that was the natural reaction to betrayal. But in this moment, I find that I feel something else. Not emptiness, more like a clean void, the kind you see in an abandoned house where dust motes drift in sunlight. It's a state of suspension. I suppose you could call it shock. But it feels calm. Too calm. When I piece it all together, the earliest sign was that day you came home wearing a slightly different perfume. You had never worn anything floral before. You were partial to musky, warm scents. You said that a friend had given you a sample, and you wanted to try something new. I recall noticing it, inhaling once, wanting to ask more but deciding it didn't matter. We all change our tastes sometimes, I reasoned. Back then, I trusted you with my life. You always said you hated secrets, that you believed in honesty. You even told our friends, those times we invited them over for barbecues or birthdays, how important truth was in a marriage. I remember the day you toasted to that idea. To honesty, you said, raising a glass of wine. And I raised mine too, proud to be by your side. Now I watch that memory from a distance, trying to see the moment a lie slipped in behind the words. I discovered something was off the day the results arrived. A normal Wednesday, bills, junk mail, and one official-looking envelope with laboratory logos I recognized. My eyes flicked over the page. My heart didn't pound. My breath didn't stutter. It was just a single line, so final, so matter-of-fact. Probability of paternity equals 0%. Clean. Scientific. Unyielding. It was like a scalpel cutting through tissue. I've often heard people say, blood doesn't lie. I never really cared about that phrase until the second I read the results. And now, I can't forget it. It plays in my mind like a funeral procession, slow and haunting. I think of my son, my boy, with those big eyes I used to see as mirrors of my own. I'd held him in the hospital just moments after he was born. I was the first man to touch him, to count his tiny fingers. I made a promise then that I would be everything he needed. But the words on that paper told me something else, that I was a stranger to him in ways I never expected. "Daddy, come play," he had said the evening before the envelope arrived. I sat on the floor with him, building a tower of plastic blocks. He broke into laughter every time the tower collapsed. Later, you came into the living room, crossing your arms, smiling at us. I thought we were a family. I thought that was our life. Now, after reading that single line from the lab, I felt the world shift. Not violently, just a tilt, as if the floor under my feet had turned into a narrow ledge. I didn't tear up the envelope. I kept it. I didn't tell you that I had seen the report. Instead, I placed it in my sock drawer, carefully folded, next to that watch my father gave me when I graduated from college. I told myself, tomorrow, I'll decide what to do. The next day came and went, and then a full week passed. Each time I opened the drawer, I saw it there. Each time, I wondered how such a thin slip of paper could weigh so heavily on my mind. I started to notice more details. Phone calls that made you wander out of earshot, speaking in hushed tones. A new password on your laptop. A missed dinner date you shrugged off as a meeting running late at work. The more I looked, the more I saw. Reality took on a new color, but it wasn't bright or dark. It was sterile, like the fluorescent glow of a hospital corridor. That's how I learned the truth. I never confronted you directly. Instead, I searched. I found a series of messages on an old phone I'd once given you. You used it as a backup, but you must have forgotten to clear it. The messages spelled out an affair with a man named James. He was in your phone as J from work, though you always said you had no male coworkers close enough to text at night. The texts were explicit, describing stolen moments in hotel rooms, confessions of longing, the excitement of secrecy. Every line felt like a scalpel sliding deeper. And then I found evidence of more. Pictures of the two of you, both of you in a car, your hand on his shoulder. A restaurant bill you had saved for some reason, a charge for a cheap motel 2 towns over. The final piece that cut me open was a text from you. I wish this could last forever. There was a photo attached, just your face, a smile I recognized as real contentment, more genuine than any grin you'd given me in recent months. I sat in the kitchen with these discoveries open on the phone screen. I set it on the table next to the morning's cold coffee. I see it all now. I said to no one, because you were out. You had gone to visit a friend, or so you said. I just stared at the phone until the screen went dark. Then I put it all away in a desk drawer. There was a moment when I felt the urge to throw the phone against the wall, to watch it shatter. But I didn't. I was calm. Calm as a man after the last heartbeat has left the patient's body. The final measure of a surgeon, seeing life slip away on the monitor. Not long after, I forced myself to recall those nights when you'd come home late, the faint scent of aftershave in your hair. I remember confronting you about the smell. You laughed. Well, it was just a new product in the women's restroom. I believed you. I chose to believe you. Now, I see the shape of everything for what it is. And it's too neat, too consistent. Like lines on a graph, all pointing to a single conclusion. One day, I decided to follow you. You left mid-afternoon, and I knew you were heading somewhere that wasn't your usual route. I took the car and stayed far enough behind, watching as you drove to a small commercial plaza near the outskirts of town. I parked 2 rows away, tilted my seat back. I saw you leave your car. I saw him greet you, tall, well-dressed, and confident. He leaned in, kissed you like he owned you. And you let him. There in the open. The moment felt surreal, like I was watching a scene in slow motion, waiting for someone to yell, "Cut." But it kept going. You both went into a building. Could have been a conference room or a hotel. My eyes drifted to the sign overhead. Event space for rent by the hour. Subtle enough for your purposes. When you emerged hours later, you straightened your skirt, and your hair was lightly disheveled. He brushed his fingers against your waist. The gesture was casual, intimate. My heart didn't pound. I didn't hold my breath. I just stared. Then you parted ways. You got in your car. I stayed in mine, waiting until you were gone before I started the engine. I recall checking my watch once. My father's watch. The second hand ticked normally. A small mechanical heartbeat in a world that suddenly felt drained of life. I said nothing to you that evening. You returned home, greeted me as though you had been at a friend's place. Maybe you showered, or maybe you didn't bother. Maybe I didn't care. I found an odd fascination in seeing how you lied without blinking, how you carried on. I wonder if you thought I was blind or simply gullible. But the calmness, this surgical detachment, did not leave. I stood there, nodding at your stories, your excuses. I asked, "How was your day?" to see if you'd answer with a straight face. You said, "Busy, but good." I noticed you no longer made eye contact. You moved around the kitchen, flipping open cabinets, rummaging for plates. I followed you with my eyes, waiting for a crack in the facade. None came. The first time I saw you with him in a truly intimate moment was at that same event space, a few days later. I entered quietly. The caretaker of the building apparently recognized you from a previous visit and assumed I was another client. I walked through a corridor painted in dull beige. The only sounds were faint echoes, and I followed them. Then, from behind a door, I heard your voice, soft, breathless and urgent. I heard him too, murmuring your name. You were both immersed in your own world, oblivious to the squeak of the door as I opened it a fraction of an inch. There you were, clothes half off, his hands on your waist, your fingers trailing across his back. The way you gasped, the flush on your cheeks, these were things you never showed me anymore. I watched for seconds that felt like hours. My own heart was steady. It didn't thunder, didn't choke. It just beat methodically, as though I was in an operating room. My eyes took in the details, your hair messy, your mouth trembling, your body pressed close to his. I heard you whisper, "I needed this," and his low reply, "We deserve this." Then I backed away, quietly, shutting the door without a sound. I stood in the corridor for a moment, staring at the drab wallpaper. I felt an odd sense of detachment. If someone had asked me, "How do you feel?" I wouldn't have known what to say. I thought about the child at home, my boy, but not my boy. I thought about you telling me, "I'll be back soon." I didn't burst in to disrupt your moment. I walked out of the building into the parking lot, got in my car, and drove home. An hour later, I made dinner for myself and our children. I poured them some juice, told them to do their homework. My daughter said she missed you, asked where you were. "She's with a friend," I replied. Then I sat down and chewed my food as if it were rubber. I stared at the empty seat across from me and realized that seat had been empty for far longer than I'd admitted to myself. I didn't speak a word of my discovery. Not that night, not the next. I watched you carry on, balancing our normal family routines with your secret escapades. The ache came from memories that started to feel like illusions. Our wedding day, your tears of happiness, the promise we made. I could see it all as if through a frosted window, distant, colorless. When I learned the truth of our son's paternity, the puzzle was complete. You must have known from the start. Or maybe you hoped it wasn't true, that you and I could pretend. I'm not sure. You never said. I waited for you to slip and mention something. You never did. You must have guessed that test results might show up eventually, that one day the facade would crumble. Maybe you hoped it would happen after you were long gone, or maybe you wanted me to remain in ignorance. Either way, it changed nothing. But it did change everything, just not in the way people might expect. It didn't drive me to scream or threaten. Instead, I started to plan. In my calmness, I recognized something. I needed to show the world who you really were, at least the part I discovered. I wanted those who ate at our table, who saw us as the perfect couple, to witness the truth. Not out of rage. I don't do rage. But out of a need for honesty, which you once claimed to hold dear. So I arranged a gathering. A small get-together under the guise of a family dinner. With a few friends we often invited for birthdays and anniversaries. I made sure to include the ones who had praised our marriage, who always said how lucky we were to have found each other. I wanted them there, as living, breathing witnesses. When the night came, I greeted them, offered drinks, let them settle. You were delayed, an errand, you said. I suspected you were with him, stealing one more moment before you returned to play the doting wife. When you arrived, you looked flushed and uncertain, scanning the room as if you sensed that something was off. I remember how you set your purse down, trying to smile, but your eyes flicked nervously from guest to guest. You knew me well enough to sense a shift in the atmosphere. I asked everyone to gather in the living room. You stood by the fireplace, hands clasped, posture rigid. I held a folded piece of paper, the paternity test. Then I said in front of them all, "If you're reading this, it means I'm gone." Those were the words I had written on a letter I left on the coffee table, next to the test results. But I read them aloud now, my voice calm, my eyes never leaving yours. You opened your mouth to speak, but no sound came out. I said, "You all believed we were the perfect couple." She believed I'd never find out. I waved the letter gently. I did find out. The room was silent. A couple of our friends shot anxious glances at each other. One cleared his throat, uncertain of what to do. Your face paled. In that quiet hush, you looked to me as if to say something. Maybe a denial, maybe an apology. But you remained silent. And so I continued. I learned the truth about our son. I learned about the man she goes to see behind my back. And I learned how little she thinks of my worth. Then I stared straight at you. Well, it was just. That's what you said, right? I saw a flash of recognition in your eyes. That memory from the hallway. The words you let slip. You realized I'd been holding on to them. I forced a thin smile. You said it was just a friend, just a meeting, just a moment. But this, I tapped the letter. This isn't just anything. It's my life. I paused. It's his life too. I added, meaning the boy I love, who no longer belongs to me in any biological sense. You didn't run. You didn't cry. Your lips parted, but you remained still, like a statue. Everyone around us looked from me to you, not sure whether to intervene. I placed the letter on the table, and then I left the room. No theatrics, no door slammed. I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and drank. I heard murmurs behind me. Someone whispered your name. Someone else cleared their throat. And you? Well, you just stood there, absorbing it all. Later, I'm told you tried to speak, but nothing coherent came out. People filed out of the house in a confused hush, leaving you alone in that living room. I watched from the edge of the hallway, half concealed by the shadows. You stared at the letter, then at the paternity test. When you noticed me watching, you looked up. Our eyes met, and I saw your face twist with something like guilt. Maybe fear. Maybe the weight of everything finally fell on you. After a long moment, you took the test result in your hand. You read it again, as if you needed confirmation. I think you wanted to see if there was any chance it was faked. But I had left the envelope, the official stamps, the signatures. It was real, and you knew it. Then I stepped forward and said the only words that came to mind. I'm not here. It sounded cryptic, but it was the truth. I had become absent, a shell performing necessary tasks, but absent from the emotion that once bound me to you. I had told the guests I was leaving, but physically I was still in the house, just for that moment. I wanted to see your face as you realized what you had truly lost. Where are you going? You finally asked. Your voice was soft, trembling. I shrugged. Away from this, I answered. Then I walked out the front door. I didn't slam it. I closed it gently. And that's how I ended the night. I'm not sure if that qualifies as revenge. But for me, it was the only way to show you, calmly, factually, what your lies had done. The part of me that once longed for your explanations was silent. I didn't want them anymore. I used to crave a reason, but maybe there is none that makes sense. For a few days, I slept in a motel, letting the quiet of anonymity wrap around me. The kids were with my sister. I called them each night, told them I loved them, never missing the chance to say goodnight. My sister understood something serious had happened. She didn't pry for details, but she offered her unwavering support. Part of me thought about your lover, James. I imagined you calling him, crying, asking him what to do next. I pictured him holding you, or maybe he turned away, not wanting the drama. I didn't know and found that I wasn't certain I cared. But my revenge, if you can call it that, came at a cost. In that motel room, I couldn't sleep well. I'd stare at the stained ceiling tiles. Everything replayed in my head like an endless tape. The day we brought our second child home from the hospital, the weekends we spent together, the inside jokes we shared. Those images carried an ache of memory, not a sharp pain of betrayal. The betrayal was more about you and him. The ache was about me and you, about the life I thought we had. Friends tried to contact me. Some were confused, some concerned. A couple left voicemails, saying you were a wreck, that you refused to talk about what happened. I ignored them. I remained in that calm state, that void of feeling. I don't know what to feel. I told myself whenever the pain resurfaced. Maybe that was easier than letting myself truly hurt. Days turned to a week. The kids needed me. I couldn't abandon them forever, even if one wasn't biologically mine. That was never his fault. I realized that no matter what your betrayal meant, he was still my son. In so many ways, I had raised him, watched him grow. A test result doesn't erase a bond formed through daily life. Teaching him to ride a bike, reading bedtime stories. So I returned to the house. I expected you might be gone, but you weren't. You were in the living room, a box of tissues on the coffee table, eyes swollen and red. The furniture looked exactly the same, but the air felt colder. I set my keys down, looked at you, and you looked back. No one spoke. Then I walked upstairs to the bedroom we once shared. It was empty, no sign that you'd been sleeping there. I set a small duffel bag on the bed, not unpacking it, just letting it sit there, as if to tell you I wasn't committed to staying. When I came downstairs, you approached me slowly. "I'm sorry," you whispered. I stared at you. I didn't reply, because I didn't know what to do with your apology. I noticed you wore one of those loose sweaters you always liked to lounge in, and I saw the lines of your body beneath it. I used to find comfort in that sight, but now it only reminded me of the moment I saw him touching you. I turned away, walked into the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and drank. You followed me. "I know you probably hate me," you said. I kept my back to you. I still didn't answer. You exhaled a shaky breath. I didn't mean to let it go so far. Then, at last, you repeated that phrase. "Well, it was just," you swallowed. I told myself it was just once, just a brief spark. I didn't think it would become this. I set the glass down on the counter, turned to face you. "It is what it is," I said. "You're not a saint. Neither am I. I'm just a man who thought he had a wife he could trust." You flinched, as if I'd slapped you. Silence settled between us. Finally, you said, "Please, can we talk?" I gave a slight shake of my head. "I'm not ready to talk. Not now. Maybe not ever." And I walked away, leaving you standing in the kitchen. If you had tried to hold me, maybe I would have pushed you away. If you had yelled at me, maybe I would have matched your voice. Instead, you let me go, as if you understood we had entered a realm beyond normal arguments. I took my duffel bag upstairs again, took out a change of clothes, and then I left the house. That night, I checked into a different place, a small furnished apartment I found on a month-to-month rental. I told my sister I needed to figure out next steps. The kids stayed with her a bit longer. I made a point to see them every day, pick them up from school, help with homework, be there. I told them, "Mom, and I need some space to think," and left it at that. They were worried, but I tried to reassure them in my calm, measured tone. I realized I wasn't sleeping well. I had nightmares sometimes, replays of that corridor, the door slightly ajar, you in someone else's arms. Always the same sensation, not heartbreak, but a cold clarity. I'd wake up in a sweat, my heart pounding, but by the time morning came, I was back to numbness again. During the day, I functioned normally. I went to work, typed emails, attended meetings, came home to my rented apartment. In the evenings, I let the TV run in the background, though I rarely paid attention. I learned that numbness is a tricky companion. It keeps you from feeling agony, but it also robs you of simple joy. Time passed. Word got around in our circle of friends, the rumors swirling. Some disapproved of how I'd exposed you in front of them, saying it was cruel. Others said you got what you deserved. I didn't bother setting anyone straight. I just stared at them blankly if they tried to bring it up. Then came a text from you. "We need to talk about the kids." I agreed. We arranged to meet at a neutral spot, some coffee shop with bright lights and the hum of an espresso machine, so public that neither of us could cause a scene. Not that I intended to. When I arrived, you were already there, seated at a small table in the corner. You wore jeans and a sweater, hair pulled back. eyes downcast. I took the seat across from you. "Hello," I said, my voice even. "What's on your mind?" You shifted in your chair. "I'm worried about them. They ask questions. They want to know why you're not home, if we're getting a divorce." You fiddled with the cardboard coffee sleeve. "I don't know what to tell them." For a moment, I almost pitied you, but the memory of your hands on him returned. Then I said, "Tell them we're sorting things out." A pause. "Because that's the truth." You nodded. I noticed your hands trembling slightly. Maybe you were afraid of losing everything. Then you spoke again, softly. "I'm sorry. I never wanted this." I looked at you. Wanted or not, you did it. The dryness in my tone felt like I was reciting a medical report. Your eyes filled with tears, but you blinked them back. "I didn't reach out to comfort you. I wish I could take it back," you said. "I wish I could fix it." I kept silent for a moment. Then, calmly, I asked, "Do you still see him?" You swallowed. "No." I ended that. I studied your face. I didn't see the usual signs of a lie. But at this point, I wasn't sure it mattered. "Why did you do it?" I asked quietly, though I wasn't even sure I wanted the answer. You hesitated, then said, "I felt lonely." You were distant, always busy, always planning for the future, but never present. He, James, made me feel seen. The words sank in. I gave a small nod. "And I guess that made it okay to lie." You closed your eyes. "No, it didn't. It's not okay." But I told myself it was just a harmless escape, that you'd never know. My next question was the hardest. Did you ever love him? You took a long moment before responding. "I don't know. Maybe I loved the idea of him, or how he made me feel. But love." Your voice trailed off. That was all I needed to hear. We sat in silence for a few minutes. People around us were engaged in their own conversations. The espresso machine hissed, cups clinked. Life went on for them, unaffected by our personal storm. Finally, I stood. "We'll figure out custody. I'm not giving up on the kids." You nodded. I picked up my jacket, walked out. I didn't look back. In the days that followed, I drafted divorce papers. I was systematic about it, dividing assets, focusing on what was best for the children. My lawyer told me I was surprisingly calm for someone in my situation. I only answered, "There's no point in getting angry. What's done is done." Yet inside, there were nights I woke up with my heart racing, uncertain of who or what I was anymore. My identity had been a husband, father, provider. Now I felt like an actor stepping off stage, the role abandoned. I'd walk to the bathroom, stare at my reflection in the mirror, searching for signs of the man I used to be. Sometimes I thought I glimpsed him in the line of my jaw or the shape of my eyes. But he seemed distant, a ghost. We negotiated. We tried to remain civil for the children. I repeated to you that I was leaving you, not them. You seemed grateful, but also haunted. You tried a few times to talk about us, about a second chance, about therapy. I refused each time. Maybe I should have considered it, but I couldn't see the point. The affair had been too extensive, too deliberate. And the child you gave me was someone else's. That's not an easy fix. There was a night that James tried to call me. I recognized the number from old phone logs. I let it ring, then blocked it. Whatever he wanted to say, I wasn't interested. Maybe he wanted to apologize or explain, or maybe he wanted to blame me for not paying enough attention to you. I didn't care. One day, I drove by that event space, the place where I saw you both. I parked for a moment, staring at the sign. Rent by the hour, it said. It all felt so trivial, so transactional. I pictured you stepping inside with him, hungry for that moment, not caring who might see. I used to wonder what I would say if I confronted him there, face to face. Now I realized I had nothing to say. I still took the kids to the park on weekends, took them to watch a ball game. The older child noticed that tension. She asked, "Why aren't we all together?" I told her, Mommy and I have things to work out." She nodded with a seriousness beyond her years. The younger boy, the one the test said isn't mine, still clung to me with unreserved affection. He didn't know any different. He loved me because I was Dad, the man who played superheroes with him, who kissed him goodnight. I realized that part of me still loved him fiercely. That bond doesn't end with a test result. Weeks boiled into months. The divorce procedures moved forward. You remained in the house, but I could see you struggling to hold on to something that was slipping away. Meanwhile, I prepared a new place for me and the kids, where they could stay part of the time. I tried to keep my life stable for them, even if the emotional ground was unsteady. Eventually, the day came when the papers were ready to sign. The lawyer's office was quiet. You arrived before me, perched on a couch with your hands folded in your lap. I entered, nodded at you in greeting. Neither of us said a word as we sat at a polished wooden table. The lawyer explained the final details. We each signed our names on the dotted line. When it was done, you turned to me, your eyes brimming with tears. "I'm so sorry," you whispered. I studied your face, then nodded. "I know." I left the office, walked outside, and felt the cool air on my skin. It was dusk, the sky a swirl of purple and orange. I stood on the sidewalk, letting a wave of something wash over me. Regret, relief, maybe both. Then I exhaled, as if I'd been holding my breath for months. Life continued in the weeks that followed. The kids split their time between us. I made sure they had everything they needed at my place, from clothes to their favorite cereals. They adjusted slowly. You tried to keep a sense of normalcy, though you avoided stepping on my new territory. I suppose you realized how final it all was. One evening, a mutual friend told me that James had moved to another city, that he and you weren't seeing each other anymore. I just nodded and changed the subject. The friend looked at me curiously, then dropped it. Everyone around me seemed to be waiting for me to explode, to break down or lash out. I never did. I think about that night of the confrontation, the little moral court I held in our living room, how I walked away after reading the letter. It was a moment I can't entirely forget. Some part of me wonders if I was too harsh, if I orchestrated that scene out of petty vengeance. But another part of me says, she took something from you. You had a right to show the world the truth. And maybe that's all there is to say. I still wear my father's watch. Its ticking reminds me that time moves on. The kids laugh sometimes, ask for their bedtime stories. They're the reason I keep going, keep finding normalcy in a world that lost its stability. My oldest has a school performance next month, some choir recital, and I promised her I'd be in the front row. The younger boy wants to learn to swim better, so I enrolled him in lessons at the local pool. These are the small victories, the little moments that keep me grounded. On rare occasions, I catch a glimpse of you at a school event or around town. We exchange polite nods. I don't harbor malice in those moments. A calm emptiness still resides where trust used to be. People ask if I've forgiven you. I don't know if forgiveness is what I feel. Detachment, maybe acceptance. Some days, I feel the pain of memory, a flicker of sadness for what we lost. But it passes. I don't linger on it. My life is about moving forward, even if the steps are measured and slow. Sometimes, late at night, I do ask myself, was this the best possible outcome? I'm not certain, but I am certain it was the only outcome I could live with. You were not a saint, and I was no fool. I learned that illusions, once shattered, cannot be pieced back together. They're too fragile, like the fine glass we kept in our wedding cabinet. I think about the vow we made. For better, for worse. We never imagined the worse would come dressed as betrayal, sealed in a paternity test. But here we are. And so I close this chapter, calmly, methodically, a surgeon finishing the final suture. There's no grand moral, no real conclusion. Just the facts, the remains, and the clarity of knowing exactly where we stand. You are not a saint. Neither am I. We're just two people who lost sight of what mattered. And this is the cost we pay in the end.